This is a C major chord in root position, as displayed on the staff, and here depicted with red steps on the ladder. Remember how we can construct a C major chord? We take the note C as a fundamental. As the second note, we take the most dominant overtone besides the octave, that is a perfect fifth. Then, for the third note, we middle the perfect fifth. Here we can choose between a minor third and a major third. Since adding a major third to a minor third gives a fifth, and adding a minor third to a major third gives the same, we can choose either combination. If the major third is the first interval, then the chord is called a C major chord in root position. If we choose the minor third as the first interval, the chord is called a C minor chord in root position. By the way, the minor third is a strong overtone which has a 5:6 ratio in the chest intonation scale. However, it is the overtone we left out in the 8-note scale, because the ratio cannot be constructed easily with the first 4 ratios. Common chords are based on words. Question: how many combinations with repetition for 2 stacked up thirds, minor or major, are possible? Click the right button. Good. The 4 combinations are minor and minor, minor and major, major and minor, major and major. And the corresponding chord names or qualities of the triads are diminished triad, minor triad, major triad, augmented triad. Here, the chord notes depicted on a circle. Minor thirds cover 3 half steps. Major thirds cover 4 half steps. Let us see how they look on the ladder and the staff. The 2 minor thirds add up to a diminished fifth, hence the name diminished triad. The 2 major thirds add up to an augmented fifth. Therefore, it is called an augmented triad. To represent a diminished triad in the key of C major, we have to use 2 flats. Similarly, we have to use a sharp to represent an augmented triad. The use of flats and sharps is by intention. They visualize the diminishing or augmentation. In the next exercise, you have to identify the chord name. Therefore, we will listen to the different chords again. Listen to the C minor chord. Listen to the C major chord. Listen to the C diminished chord. Listen to the C augmented chord. Now it is your turn. Click on the chord plate. Good. If this was difficult, do not worry. In the exercises we will learn how to analyze chords. By listening and then amplifying the individual notes in our head, we can go through the individual intervals. Imagining intervals makes it easy to identify the chords. Hearing intervals is much easier than assigning absolute pitches to notes. Let us go on with inversion. To invert an interval or a chord, you have to rise the lowest note an octave higher. That is, we replace the lowest note with its own first overtone, which has half the wavelength and swings with double the frequency. For inverting intervals, we can see the following behaviors. Major intervals get minor intervals, and vice versa. Augmented intervals get diminished intervals, and vice versa. And perfect intervals will stay perfect. Again, perfect. Adding the interval number of an interval and its inverse interval number always gives 9. For example, a major third and its inverse, a minor 6, results in 3 plus 6 equals 9. And of course, an interval plus its inverse interval always gives, by definition, an octave. A triad has 3 notes, therefore contains 2 intervals. To demonstrate chord inversion, I will use the C major chord. The starting combination with the root note at the bottom is called the root position. Now let us make the first inversion. This is a C major chord in its first inversion. If we invert this chord again, we get a C major chord in its second inversion. If we invert this chord again, we would get a C major chord in its third inversion. However, we get the same pattern that we had at the beginning. That is, the notes C, E and G. The root position again, just an octave higher. So, with triads there are only 2 inversions possible. This leaves us the following 3 C major chords. C major chord in root position, C major chord in first inversion, C major chord in second inversion. The inverted chords no longer contain a perfect fifth. The inversion leads to a perfect fourth. We can recognize that a triad is an inversion by looking for a fourth. If the triad contains a fourth, then it is an inverted triad. If the fourth is at the higher part, we have a triad in its first inversion. Otherwise, it is a second inversion. As an example, we did inverse the C major chord. All qualities of a triad, that is, minor, major, diminished and augmented, can be inverted. This gives us a total of 12 combinations. 4 qualities times 3 positions equals 12. Each triad is identified by its root note. In all our samples, including inversions, the root note always was C, the black note. To find the root note, you have to arrange the notes so that 2/3 are stacked together. The lowest note is then the root note. Now get ready for the next exercise. There are other names for triads which do not consist of thirds only. For example, suspended chords. We will not go deeper into this kind of chords. What happens if we add another third